Hey everyone, I'm Billy and welcome back to the Perantau podcast. How would you feel if I told you that an Australian has taken up the responsibility to teach Indonesian, or Bahasa Indonesia, in Australia, and a pretty decent one at that? Well, coming on the podcast today, we have Darcy Murphy, a VCE Indonesian teacher at Bremer College, and besides having taught for the past 3 years, Darcy's interest in Indonesian culture and language started years ago, and has since actively participated in the Australian Indonesian youth space. So in this episode, we'll talk about his experience as an Australian teaching Indonesian, his trips to Yogyakarta, his work with the Bridge Partnerships program, and his thoughts on the future of Indonesian language teaching. So without further ado, please welcome Darcy. Right, so Darcy, thank you again for taking the time and agreeing to talk to me about, again, you don't even know what we're going to talk about today, which is amazing, really. But so I want to talk to you today about your history with learning Indonesian and especially teaching Indonesian now, because I think you've gone on quite an interesting journey to say the least, throughout the past few years, from studying something completely unrelated and then learning Indonesian, going to Indonesia, then teaching Indonesian now. I think it's just a really interesting life you had, to say the least. So before we get into things, what do you think is one word that summarizes who you are?
Oh, one word, okay. Kalau ada satu kata itu pasti santai.
Santai. Kenapa
Atau
santai?
santuy, santuy ya. Aku nggak tahu kenapa, mungkin itu karena aku merasa kayak kepribadianku itu kan kalau waktuku di Australia belajar SMP, SMA, aku selalu stres untuk tentang apapun ya. But when I went to Indonesia dan belajar bahasa Indonesia, belajar budaya Indonesia, it just buat aku nggak stres, buat aku santai. So that's probably why it's completely changed my personality as well, which is weird.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. I mean, because I guess the use you've had is anything but santai gitu. Santai berarti kan tenang aja gitu. But then the life you've had so far, you know, I guess getting onto that, could you talk more about your first encounter with Indonesian, or at least your first interaction with Indonesian?
Jadi yang pertama kali belajar bahasa Indonesia atau like my first interaction with Indonesian at all was in primary school. Jadi di banyak sekolah di Australia itu wajib belajar bahasa. Biasanya ada 2 pilihan, yang di sekolahku ada bahasa Indonesia sama bahasa Jerman. And at the time, I was just thinking like Indonesia tuh emang lebih dekat, tuh juga like more affordable. So I decided to go there, and yeah, Germany just sounded boring.
Cuman jadi yang pas pertama-tamanya tuh ya, apa sih sebenarnya tentang bahasa Indonesia yang menarik? Because you said, well, German's boring, and then Indonesian's, I was like, oh, this is something cool. But like, what is that cool aspect per se?
Well, it's hard to put into words, but I think the cool aspect was, I mean, the main reason itu kan karena guru Indonesia itu lebih keren daripada guru Jerman. Buat like pelajaran itu seru, like learning about, kan Jerman itu tentang, I don't even know what they learned about. I never focused on it too much. But when they sold Indonesian language, it was all about like you got to try cool food, you got to like maybe go to Indonesia one day, which is like warmer than Melbourne. A lot warmer than Melbourne actually. And yeah, I think my biggest reason for picking it was because like Indonesian teachers are just cooler than other teachers.
Was there a lot of kids from your school back then that also took Indonesian? Or were you the minority there?
I think because of scheduling, they made it 50-50. So even if you wanted to, it was like preferences, but yeah, 50% of students did Indo, 50% did German.
Oh, that's cool. And how are you participating in this space now with Indonesian, well, teaching on one hand, but then interacting with sort of just other different kinds of groups of people in Melbourne?
Uh, well, I don't know why, but it's become a big aspect of my personality, just being interested in Indonesia. Jadi aku sekarang guru bahasa Indonesia di sekolah SMA di Australia. I'm the director of partnerships and memberships at AYA, the Australia Indonesia Youth Association, which I've been associated with for like 8 years, 6, 7 years now. So a long time. I have met like tons of people when I studied in Yogyakarta and in Surabaya that I just met there. So my Instagram feed is a lot of Indonesian, so I'm just always talking to them on that. And yeah, I don't know. There's just lots of small, very minute ways that I interact with Indonesia that are like all the time though. So every day there's one going on. Like for example, with my current students at school, I've set up a school partnership dengan sekolah di Solo. So every now and then, like I'm talking to the teachers over there, organizing like Zoom sessions between my students and their students to practice their Indonesian and English. So
What I really want to get at is how did you actually go from doing a BSc in informatics at UNIMEL to doing a Master of Teaching and then now teaching Indonesian and pursuing a Master of Education? Like that's not direct at all. So I want to really understand the thought process behind that and like what were the driving factors really.
well, so that sort of takes me back to like when I finished high school, when I finished year 12 in Victoria. I had no clue what I wanted to do, like no clue whatsoever. Jadi kakekku bilang, oh ya, ke Unimab saja belajar informatika tentang komputer. It's like good, you'll find a job. So I just did that because my grandfather told me to. Um, but at the same time, uh, karena salah satu guru bahasa Indonesia di SMA aku, suami dia kan dosennya di Universitas Melbourne. Uh, so they recommended, my high school Indo teachers recommended for me to do it as an elective at university as well. So while I was doing my computer science degree, I also was doing Indonesian sort of part-time as an elective throughout all of the years to keep up with it. And I sort of realized by the time I got to my third year, started my third year, into my second year, uh, computer science wasn't it for me. I found it really boring. After I did an internship in that, I'm like just looking at a screen all day. I can't imagine doing that for 50 more years. Uh, so then I tried to find a pathway to do something else. And Indonesian was like the one subject at uni that I really loved. I made a lot of connections with different people, like lecturers, other students. There was like none of my other subjects offered me the opportunity to do exchange. But with UniMelb, I did like a 3-week course in Bali, learning about Indonesian history and culture. And then I got offered the opportunity to do a semester abroad in Jogja as well with Ichitius. And then I did IAP as well, all back to back to back, which was like, it just sort of snowballed into me really liking Indonesian. And so when I came back to Australia from IAP in 2019, I'm like, how can I keep doing this? And there were really only two clear paths. One was diplomat or translator, and the other was teacher. And teacher sounded more chill, and I just got to, like, literally my job is just to talk about Indonesia all day, every day, and I get to choose the topics as well because I'm the only teacher there. So I just talk about whatever I want to talk about. Like, yes, they were talking about Olympiade and like Indonesia's gold medals and like comparing them with Susi Susanti. So like, and that, yeah. So
Jadi guru jauh lebih santai
yeah,
daripada jadi diplomat.
yeah, memang gitu.
Honestly, those are words to live by. Really, just chill. Just take the easy road. But I guess, and again, now going back to the whole teaching process, even though yes, it might seem in comparison more relaxed or a bit more laid back, but there's still a lot of effort that goes into teaching, right? So you're now a VCE Indonesian teacher at Braemar College. Now it's not every day that you'd find an Australian school teaching Indonesian as a subject, even though yes, in your upbringing, you did have Indonesian at school, and you have been acquainted with a lot of other kids that have learned Indonesian at school, but it's still not as commonly taught as a lot of other European languages like Spanish, French, German, even Latin at some points, right? So, that sort of scarcity I think is interesting. So could you tell us more about the curriculum, the things that you teach, and do they differ from different schools, or how does it work really?
So with, I can't really speak for other states, but in Victoria, specifically for VCE, uh, languages are very like the curriculum is pretty much the same across every language. So French, Mandarin, Indonesian, Spanish, German, and a couple of others. They all have the same curriculum, but then they have different cultural points within them. So obviously there's different grammatical points as well, because Japanese grammar is nothing like Indonesian grammar, for example. So you teach to that, but the end goal ultimately is the same. All of the students need to learn how to read in their target language, how to write in their target language, speak, and listen. So those are the four major skills. And I also added another skill recently called viewing, which is like sort of ambiguous. It's like looking at graphics and being able to understand pictures and stuff in other languages. So like infographics and stuff like that. But essentially, at the end of the curriculum for any language, is you have to be able to do those five things. So literally every day, we're pretty much practicing one of those five things, like either through like just general conversation, speaking, uh, learning about an Indonesian cultural aspect through a reading text or watching a video, or like making them write like extended personal pieces, like a persuasive piece or a evaluative piece about, for example, the most recent one my year 12s did was they had to write a persuasive piece about a jamu stall that they were opening, and they had to sell it jamu to as many people as possible and just market it. So that was fun. Yeah, some of them have come up with some pretty interesting ideas.
What was the most interesting idea you had?
Well, one of them just said every other type of jamu is going to poison you, so you got to try my secret recipe. Uh, like jamu paprika bisa, jamu. They were pretty much just like handing out free samples to people in Jakarta. I'm like, well, how are you going to make money? But yeah,
Surely that could count as defamation
yeah.
to an extent, no?
One of them said that it causes cancer. Like this other company's one causes cancer. You can't say that.
Defamation for sure. But now my question is, since joining the school, has there been a shift or transformation in terms of the teaching style or the subject material that's being taught at the school, or has it just been the same thing?
I think the general topics is sort of have to stay the same because they're prescribed through the curriculum. So like we have to talk about Indonesian history at one point. We have to talk about the environment at one point, and so on and so forth. But I think that the way that we do it is slightly more contemporary, and it's more like I like to incorporate a lot of like current news articles. So we covered the election earlier this year. We looked at what other controversy we looked at Independence Day at the new capital yesterday, talking about the new capital and uh, the sort of big ambitions and dreams of it, as well as some of its shortfalls in terms of uh, various different types of things that are going wrong with it as well. So keeping it modern, and I think the biggest thing for them is uh, peer engagement. So I think the biggest thing that sort of I've pushed for and kept pushing for is like one-on-one buddies with in a student in Indonesia. Like I've got students that are now just like texting their Indonesian buddies like all hours of the day, sometimes for inappropriate reasons, but usually for help with their work or practicing their Indonesian.
So like a pen pal kind of system, yeah.
Yeah, pen
Yeah.
system.
How are they enjoying it?
They love it. I think the fact that it's interacting with someone their own age speaking Indonesian, because most of the Indonesians they meet here, like the youngest Indonesian you'll find in Melbourne, really, like typically is either a uni age student or they're older worker. So they haven't really ever met anyone their age that speaks Indonesian. Even people that study Indonesian, like there's only 200 people in Victoria roughly doing it in year 12. It's like 50 in New South Wales and there's zero in Queensland. So it's really hard to find someone studying Indonesian or that is able to speak Indonesian in your own age bracket. So,
I guess speaking of age, what is the age range that you teach? What's the youngest and what's the oldest?
so my school is from year 5 to 12, which is 10 years old to 18 years old. I've taught all of the year levels, but this year I'm teaching year 8 to year 12, so 13-year-olds to 18-year-olds. Um,
Which age group do you think finds it the most engaging to learn, and which would be not problematic, but which which ones would be the most challenging to teach?
the the most engaged ones are definitely the older ones, the 17, 18-year-olds, because they've learnt enough of the language to actually be able to do stuff with it. Like they can have a conversation, they can like make fun of their other friends in Indonesian without them knowing. Like two of my students that speak Indonesian will just talk like so much gossip about other people, like right in front of them, but in Indonesian, so they don't understand. So they love being able to do that. Um, the least engaged, for the hardest ones to motivate, are the younger ones. I think there's a lot of contributing factors to it. One of them is that it's the young year levels, it's still compulsory, so everyone has to do a language. So I have like 90 kids that are in year 8 doing Indonesian this year, and like next year from that 90, only about 10 or 15 of them are going to continue studying Indonesian. So the 75 that aren't continuing are already checked out and they don't care about the subject really, a lot of them. And also I think just the language they know is like really boring. Like, so they don't really want to use it. Like they know how to say, siapa nama kamu, apa kabar, yeah, baik-baik saja. Like that's like the extent of their language ability for a lot of them. So it's like, yeah, boring for them.
Do you think then there should be a revolution in the textbooks that you guys use?
Yeah. Some of the
Yeah.
textbooks, Indonesian textbooks in Australia are like ancient. So a lot of the textbooks, or all of the textbooks actually that we use, are older than all of the students that use them. And in some cases, they're older than me. Like the textbook we use for my year 9, 10, 11, 12, they are actually older than me. They were published like around the year or two I was born, which is crazy. And like the topics in them are so like out of date as well. Like they show emails and they've got like floppy disks as well. Like I've never used a floppy disk, let alone my students. Like they don't even know what that is. Like why are they talking about it in this reading? But yeah, so they're really old, really dated, and no one's making new ones because of the like uh, the number of Indonesian students in Australia is declining, so they don't really see it as a market to make a new textbook for. So I think out of all the textbooks in Australia, the most recent one is like 2010 or something, which is Saling Silang. But then like that's only for year 7 and 8. So the older ones are like Saya Bisa, Keren, Kenalila, and Bersama Sama. All those textbooks were produced in the early 2000s at the like latest. So it's so old and so boring. So you have to make it all up yourself. Make up, yeah, everything.
Do you work with a lot of other teachers from different schools to come up with new subject materials that's more up to date, or is it really just you going at it?
Well, at the moment, it's a lot of by myself stuff, but I think there's a few organizations out there at the moment that are trying to change that and to implement like larger projects to connect teachers or Indonesian teachers better. I think the biggest one and the one that is looking the most promising at the moment is one out of Monash University called Connexi. I think you may have had a couple of guests on from Monash before, but yeah, they've got like this big project where they're making like a hub for resources for learning Indonesian, connecting Indonesian teachers and all that. So they're doing the cool stuff that I'm looking forward to using.
Yeah, I guess with well, it's interesting that you say that the number of Indonesian language students are declining in Australia. But the thing is, it also comes at a time where there's even more partnerships between Indonesia and Australia. So both governments are really pumping things on that end. But then in reality, there's not a lot of Australian students learning about Indonesian, learning Indonesian. So how do you feel about that, really?
I mean, I think there's a really large disconnect between um, what is being said by a lot of governments and what is being done. So obviously, there's a lot of large connections. There's the free trade agreement between Australia and Indonesia, and there's Indonesia's projected to be the fifth or fourth largest economy in the next decade. So they're going to be a massive like country in the world stage. So it makes sense for Australia to be the one to try and push that connection even more and more. But yeah, I think since 2012, funding for Asian language learning in Australia has like been cut to bare bones. So there's not a lot of teachers being trained. There's not a lot of programs being promoted to encourage the study. So that means there's less students. And because there's less students, there's less people that want to become teachers, or less people able to become teachers as well. And then, yeah, and then because less people know about Indonesia, less people were going to try and push to study Indonesian. So it's this really vicious cycle where, at a policy level, Australia sort of failed to um, realize like the importance of studying Indonesian and knowing Indonesian. I think it was last year or the year before when uh, relations between China and Australia was sort of soured, and Australia was trying to find exports for its wine industry. One of the ministers at the time, I forget who it was, said that we should just export all of Australia's wine to Indonesia, uh, which, if he had ever studied Indonesian, he may know that a large majority of Indonesia is Islamic, and they don't, well, not a lot of them. There isn't a massive market of wine drinkers in Indonesia. So it's, yeah, there's a general lack of understanding, which shows why you sort of need to learn it to encourage economic cooperation and trade partnerships as well.
Hmm. I mean, at the very least, one of the programs called the Bridge International School Program is something that you guys at Bremer College have benefited from. So could you talk a bit more about the program and how it's worked out for you?
Yeah, I absolutely love the people at Bridge. They're so cool and they're so nice, and they've just been able to help me out so much. So the Bridge program, which is run through the Asia Education Foundation at UniMelb, or situated at UniMelb, is a program where every year they connect, I think it's like 10 or 12 Australian schools with Indonesian counterparts, and they sort of try to foster a connection, which is the school partnership that I was talking about earlier, um, between two schools in Australia and Indonesia. They fly two teachers from the school in Indonesia over to Australia, and they get to teach and take part in like the Australian school's life for 2-3 weeks, and then uh, further from that, after they go back, the Australians are allowed to go to their Indonesian school as well. So I've actually participated in the program twice. So I've got two school partners. So because there was another school that dropped out, so I joined last minute. I'm actually going to one of my partner schools in September in Solo, Pradita Dirgantara, which is like an Air Force school in Solo, which is cool because they have a jet on campus, and I want to go ride the jet. And apparently, there's a bomb testing site nearby. You can just hear bombs getting dropped every now and then.
Oh wow, okay.
So
That's definitely something different, yeah.
yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. Um, but yeah, so we get to connect. We're making these student connections. On my school, we had a school trip for the first time in like a decade. It took 11 Indonesian students from my school in Australia to Yogyakarta for 2 weeks. And during that program, they did language lessons and they did cultural activities. But the highlight that every one of them mentioned was getting to meet their pen pals that they've been talking with for a year. So they had dinner with the students from Pradita Dirgantara, and they just like, I don't know, like it was just like so many connections being made, and like you could just see like the spark going off in their eyes, and sort of I had a lot of students after that that have talked to me about continuing their Indonesian studies at university and looking for exchange opportunities as well. So like I'm pushing a lot of them towards the New Colombo plan and to do Echichis like I did, because that's the one that I've always recommended because it was so good to me. I love Echichis. I'm not gonna lie.
Actually, yeah, could we talk more about Achichis as well? Because well, you've done it, and now you're also encouraging a lot of other people to do it.
Yeah.
So how does it compare to a lot of the other programs that bridges both Indonesia and Australia?
So Echichis is primarily directed or targeted towards university students, undergraduate students specifically, and they're all about uh, it was founded ages ago, and it's the Australian Consortium for In-Country Indonesian Study. But the moniker they like to throw around is Chichis actually stands for Aku Cinta Indonesia, Cinta Indonesia Sekali. So it's really like receh. It's like so on the nose. But yeah, it's the Australian government has this a grant called the New Colombo Grant or New Colombo Plan, where they offer, I think, any undergraduate student in Australia $8,000 unconditionally if they want to partake in study abroad in Asia. And so Achichis sort of tailors and crafts programs around that sort of funding, where they have programs for like the most basic one is just to learn Indonesian. So they have their flip program at UGM in Yogyakarta, Universitas Gadjah Mada, but they have programs for journalism, for law. They have programs for like business, that farming, like agricultural studies. They have so many different like programs, and they have like internships as well if you want to do a short course. But essentially, they take you to Indonesia, set you up with everything you need, and then you just get to like live in Indonesia for 6 months or a year or a year and a half, and just like live life as an Indonesian. So I lived in Yogyakarta for 6 months, studying Indonesian at UGM, and like the the university part was fine, even though university culture in Indonesia is really weird sometimes, just with like class kosong and just like lecturers just ditching you to go on a holiday for a week or whatever, and letting you know the morning of your class. But yeah, it's just like being able to live in Indonesia, I think made my Indonesian language so much better. Like in Australia, you only learn bahasa baku, like you just learn like very formal Indonesia, like bolehkah saya membicarakan artikel ini hari ini? Terima kasih bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu, dan saudara-saudara yang terhormat. Like it's so like rigid and formal, and you can't like use like any slang. Like you're not allowed to use like guelu like you would in Jakarta, or you can't use like singkatan. Uh, like all the shortened ways of saying words in Indonesian, like mantul is the one that comes to mind, even though it's like dad level like slang now. Like people that say mantul are like, well, like bro, you're still in like 2018, 2017, what is wrong with you? But that is when I was in Indonesia. So that's when all my slang is from. Uh, but yeah, it's like just all these incidental like meetings that just, I don't know, made you become like fall in love with Indonesia, one, and just increase your Indonesian language skills just like beyond recognition. Like before my semester abroad in Indonesia, if I listened to that person now, I would just physically cringe, like it was so bad. And now it's like I like to think like bahasa Indonesiaku itu sudah cukup lancar untuk kebanyakan for most things, just not politics and for literature. If I have to talk politics in Indonesian, I can't.
I mean, to be fair, politics is complicated even for actual Indonesians to talk about, just because it's just a complicated matter. Yeah, but should we then teach Australians more about Indonesian slang like guelu or just I guess more conversational words instead of the textbook saya, anda, and whatnot?
Yeah, I think while it's probably like really hard to incorporate it in like examinations, because like even in Indonesia, like your final exams, you're not going to be using Guelu. Like you'd probably get failed for that. But I think incorporating it into like the sort of everyday curriculum and sort of teaching them about like subcultures within Indonesia. Like my favorite one is we all every year when we're I've got my new year nines and new year tens. I like to watch videos tentang anak jaksel dan bahasa gal jaksel, and we watch videos and we keep pausing them every 5 seconds, and we try to figure out if the word is meant to be an Indonesian word or an English word,
Interesting.
because there's like my students couldn't figure out what witches means, and it's literally
What what means?
witches.
Oh.
Like a theory, like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Is that Indonesian for something? Like, no, it's literally English. Literally, osidikwe, osidiku, kayak gitu. Like, it's, yeah.
It's
Anyway,
such a weird example, but I mean that's fair though, yeah.
like random English mixed with so much Indonesian, but the English sounds like Indonesian, so that my Australian students just can't understand it. They're like, what are they saying? Like, literally? What is literally? But it's like,
Yeah.
literally.
I mean it is I guess to some extent you could call it a new subdialect of some sort, right? Because, well, as we talked about, someone from another part of Indonesia might not be able to understand that style of speaking, in the sense that there's just so much, not even loan words really, but it's just more of a new hybrid way of speaking that I do find interesting, and I think is definitely a really cool phenomenon to talk about in class. I think especially year 11s and 12s might be really interested in learning about that, and especially if they go to Indonesia and talk with their pen pals, and then they just surprise them with that Jakarta slang. I think that'd be really funny.
Yeah.
But I guess with language learning, one, because this year you did go back to Indonesia. I think was at the start of the year when you were part of a teacher exchange.
Yeah, yeah.
So what was that like? Did you absorb any new kind of language, or was it just a formality kind of, or what was it like?
So I've been to Indonesia 5 times this year.
Okay, you've been to Indonesia more times than I have this year.
Yeah. So the first time I went to Indonesia this year was for a teacher exchange to Sumbawa, the island, 2 islands over from Bali. Even for Indonesians, I have to explain to them where it is a lot of the time. Kebanyakan orang Indonesia nggak tahu ada pulau apa di NTB. Mereka tahu Lombok saja. Ada apa lagi di NTB? Nggak ada apapun.
Jujur agak malu sih tapi ya kayak sebagai orang Indonesia, tapi malah orang bule yang bisa ngajarin ini tuh pulau-pulau ada di mana gitu kan. Kita ada malu juga sih. Cuman I guess then that's also a good thing that someone puts us in our place, I guess. But carry on, yeah.
I kept telling people I was going to Sumbawa. They're like, "Oh, you're going to Sumba?" I'm like, "No, going to Sumbawa." Like Sumba, yeah? No, 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 different islands. But these are people from Jakarta. I'm like, what? Did your schooling fail you? Like, didn't you just learn about small provinsi in Indonesia? But yeah, whatever. That is just taking shots at my friends that didn't know. So yeah, I was in Sumbawa Besar for 2 weeks di sekolah SMA 2, I think. I don't want to say the wrong school, but I'm pretty sure SMA 2 Sumbawa Besar. And that was another partnership with Bridge. And for that partnership, we did the exact same thing. 2 teachers from there came to our school last year, and then I went back in January. My biggest thing while I was there was just going to classes and experiencing everyday life in Indonesia. But for example, I arrived at the airport. It's a tiny airport in Sumbawa Besar. Like it's like literally like the size of a Coles, like not even as big as a Coles. Like it's tiny. Like it's
Yeah.
one landing strip and one plane coming in at a time. There's one plane a day in and one plane out. And I was greeted by like 50, 60 people from the school there. I had the principal, all the vice principals, a bunch of teachers, and then all of the student council members as well came to greet me. So there was all these people sort of arriving home from their trips to like Jakarta or whatnot, coming to Sumbawa. And then there was just me getting greeted by like 60, 70 people, having all these flowers put all over my neck and just getting gifts and like stuff and taking photos.
Did you feel like a celebrity at
I
that
felt
point?
like Chris Hemsworth. I was,
Yeah.
I was feeling,
A lot of people might have thought that you were really.
but like the so many, and then from there we went to school because it was the start of the school day, and then there was Upacara Mandera, and we
Ah.
got there, and the principal was just like, "We have a teacher from Australia today. Can everyone please welcome him?" And then he's like, "He's going to talk to you." And I'm like, "I'm talking to them for how long?" And he's like, "I just talked to them for like 40, 50 minutes. I'm like, "What?" So they just made me talk at like a assembly with all of the students there for 45 minutes about like nothing. Like
How did that work out?
I got to the point like 30 minutes in, I had to start pulling students out of the crowd and start practicing English with them. Because
Good idea. Yeah.
I literally had nothing else. Like I introduced myself, I said a bunch of stuff about Australia, and then I gave them some AFL footballs to teach them about AFL because that's the best Australian sport in my opinion.
Interesting take. Okay.
But I'm from Victoria. I have to like AFL. And then
Fair enough.
I spread propaganda. I spread propaganda about my team as well. I'm like, everyone at the school is now a Carlton supporter. You support Carlton no matter what. If another,
Because that's the only team that they know now.
I didn't teach them any other teams because I have to support Carlton. But yeah, and then there was some weird stuff as well that I sort of had to brush aside, like um, at the flag raising ceremony and in classes as well. I had a number of like uh, kelas 2 atau 3 anak SMA like yang minta aku kalau aku ada pacar dan mereka mau berpacaran sama aku. Aku kayak, kamu masih like 16 tahun, kok kamu mau sama aku? Rasanya jijik kok.
Oh God.
I have to explain to them child safety laws in Australia. Like if I got anywhere near you, if I touched you, I would be di penjara, ditangkap
Yeah.
langsung. But yeah,
Oh no.
yeah.
Watch out, Darcy.
I had to explain it to like 20 different people. It was weird. Like so many marriage proposals.
You really were Chris Hemsworth for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even some of the staff members are like, if you're not interested in the students, maybe you want to marry me. I'm like, what? No, thank you.
Imagine going back home with 20 wives.
Yeah. I don't know. They're so forward about it, but I don't know why. Like, but when you talk about anything else, they're so like shy and quiet. But then they're really happy to just ask me to marry them. I'm like, what? But yeah. But Sumbawa was interesting. There's no Gojek in Sumbawa.
Really?
There's no Gojek. You just have Ojek. You have to call up
Yeah.
Ojek. There's no Gojek.
The traditional guy. Yeah.
It's yeah. It's so different to everywhere else I've been in Indonesia. Like all of Java, I've been to Medan, and I've been to a couple of other places as well. And there's always been Gojek. I'm like, that's my one constant. Whenever I need something, there's Gojek to save me or Grab. But in Sumbawa, I felt really isolated because there's no Gojek. I'm like, what? It's like taking away one of my arms. I need Gojek.
See, maybe this is a business opportunity for you. You know, you have potential wives, you have a business prospect. Might as well just relocate at this point, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, maybe. If everything falls apart in Australia, yeah, plan B is just go to a
Plan B.
random island, maybe Sumbawa, and just like chill and have 50 wives.
Yeah. You can just call yourself Darcy Hensworth and
They
no one would know, you know?
even made me dress up as like the in the Pakan Raja sama Hari, and we went to Istana Lokar Kayu. It's like the big wooden palace for the Sumbawanese king from way back when.
Wow.
They made me dress up as him, and then one of the students drew a portrait of me and then like framed it and gave it to me. So now I've got a picture like
Impressive.
up on my wall, like up at the top near the roof, like how you would have like Jokowi and Maruf Amin sekarang di atasnya in all of the classrooms and stuff. I just have a picture of me, kayak rajanya. I have it in my
Wow, you
oh,
really were memorialized in the school, huh?
yeah. So yeah.
Amazing. Do you think there's any other prospect in terms of, I guess, growing school to school partnerships or the relationship, yeah, Australian Indonesian schools, uh, in the future, or is it just or has it just reached a saturation point?
No, I definitely think we can keep going further and further. One thing that I'm really working hard towards, and the school in Seoul is also working hard towards, is doing like a. So we did like a student study tour where we met them, but we really want to do like an exchange where they send a student here for a term, we send a student there for a term, and those students literally just like the Australian students live in Indonesia and do school in Indonesian for a term and sort of see how life is like that. And like it's really authentic, and I think it's really cool to do something like that. And like that's you're going to learn way more doing that than on a 2 week study tour as well. So it's yeah, that's the goal. Doing like longer form exchanges.
Yeah. I guess now, more broadly speaking, beyond the school to school partnerships and more looking at Indonesian language learning and teaching in Australia, what do you think? What are your hopes are really for this very niche industry? I guess you could say.
I mean, I hope it bounces back. I really hope it does because it's how I have a job. Um, but I think fundamentally a lot of it is at a policy level, which is really hard to affect as like any sort of grassroots movements or as a teacher or as like someone just trying to make change. Uh, but my goal is, or the goal I've set for myself is, and why I'm doing a Masters of Education and Leadership, is I want to become a principal and then just make Indonesian compulsory for everyone. I'm just going to be like dictator. I'm like going to be Orba 2.0. Everyone learn Indonesian. Come on, let's go. Like, my choice.
Interesting take. Yeah, I mean that's that's definitely an interesting system to implement. What do you think the success rates are going to be like?
Well, it's definitely a long-term plan, but I definitely think like if I try hard enough, like eventually one day I'll be able to do it. And then if I can
Yeah,
show success through that, then maybe that will inspire change in other schools to do something similar. Because yeah,
hopefully, yeah.
ultimately at the end of the day, I think bilingual schools are like some of the coolest things around, where they learn like half the time they learn in English and half the time they learn in another language. Like there's schools in Australia already that do that, where they do it like in areas with large Italian populations. They have like a school that teaches half the time in Italian, half the time in English, and their Italian and their English by the end of school is their English is as good as anyone else's, and their Italian is 10 times better than the people just learning Italian like in one subject at school. So
Are there any cautionary tales that we should pay attention to?
I think there's one statistic that I love to pull out, and it's really dire, and it's like crazy to even think about. The number of people studying Indonesian in Australia today is less than the number of people in the first year it was introduced in 1970. So
Oh,
that's numbers wise, not percentages. Australia has way more people now than in the 70s.
yeah.
Even purely just the number of students is lower than it was in 1970. So
Huh.
yeah, there's like it's really fallen off. 2008 was the peak, and then since 2008, it's just been a steady decline.
Why do you think that is though?
Funding,
Simply funding.
yeah, funding
Yeah.
as well as like there's always going to be, and I think it's sort of ingrained in Australian culture, like sort of a dismissiveness towards other countries and towards learning other languages, because we're sort of in that post-colonial mindset. We're from England. There's America that's the superpower. Why do I need to speak English? Everyone else just learns English. Like, why do I need to learn Indonesian when the people I meet at university in Australia, their their English is better than mine a lot of the times, and like all of the international school students in Melbourne, they sound American. So like, why do I want to learn Indonesian? Like, English just works. But yeah, so Australians are really dismissive of learning another language a lot of the time. So I think trying to change that perception bit by bit is like how that's fixed though. So
Yeah. And what should the first step be to combat that perception?
oh, I mean, there's a lot of ways that you could do it. I mean, the biggest one would just be mandating everyone learn Indonesian, like I want to do.
Dictatorship.
Yes, but I think it's sort of moving away and just educating people about Indonesia, like older generations as well, because I have a lot of parents of students at my school that tell them like do French instead because we did French in school, and like what's in Indonesia? There's Bali. Like, haven't you seen the news in Bali? Like, it's just all stupid Australians like doing stupid stuff in Bali. It's like, come on, like if that's the only sort of way Australians are going to see Indonesia, then like people like they're not going to learn Indonesian. They're just going to go there for a cheap holiday and then never think of it again. Like a lot of the parents, even some of my grandparents, myself, like I'm going to Indonesia for a semester abroad. Like, where's that? I'm like, what?
Really, still?
Yeah. I'm like, oh,
Oh, wow.
it's like Bali. It's like, oh yeah, is it a country next to Bali? I'm like, no, no, Bali is part of the country. So a lot of Australians don't even know that Bali is in its own country.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, because I remember mom used to talk about that when she was studying abroad at one point, and how even a few decades ago, people would also have that notion. It was like, oh yeah, I know Bali, but I don't know. Is Indonesia next to Bali? It's like, but I guess it's really interesting to see that the way of thinking is still prevalent today. Even decades after, even with social media, with everything going on, uh, that a lot of Australians are still unaware that Indonesia is right there,
Yeah.
right next to us. Yeah, right? Yeah. Well, I guess that's an that's an interesting note to leave it on. it's I guess it's something bleak, but it's also something worth hoping for at the same time, just because with everything that's going on, there's a lot of opportunities, like you said, to expand on this connection. But at the same time, without proper funding and without a concerted effort from the government, then it's really a dead end until someone knows how to push those boundaries.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Thanks, Darcy. Thank you for your time. Yeah, cool. The Perantau podcast is always looking for new stories to tell and people to meet. So, if you have a story worth telling, don't be shy. Reach out on Instagram, LinkedIn, email, or wherever else you may find the Perantau podcast. Until then, thank you, and see you soon.